Hello everyone, back tuning into today's first video. We're going to do the Winter 2019-2020 NAO forecast for today's first video. So to say that we have got a big video update for you today is an understatement. This will be one of the biggest video updates that we do this year. So I'm going to talk you through the methodology and explain what the NAO is very shortly, and then we will do the forecast in the second part of the video. So if you know about the NAO forecast, we've done these every year since 2012. So if you know about the NAO forecast, then I would suggest you just skip on through the first 10-15 minutes until you get to the break where I'm going to put in before we do the forecast, and that will come up in the second half of the video. But there'll be people watching this that have never seen one of GWV's NAO forecasts, so we have to go through the methodology, explain about the NAO for all of those lovely people. We'll have GWV's Sunny Roundup coming up for you later on this afternoon, and there's actually going to be a live chat on the YouTube channel this evening at 5 o'clock. We're kind of like this afternoon, 5 o'clock. We're going to talk about the NAO forecast. We're going to take some of your questions, and it'll be interactive on GWV's YouTube channel at 5 o'clock this evening. So hope you'll enjoy that. Tune in, have a listen to that. Right, so let's get on with Winter 2019-2020 NAO forecast. I've got quite a lot to talk about. First of all, I have to explain exactly what the NAO is. So the North Atlantic Oscillation is an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state in the North Atlantic, essentially. So NAO goes through its positive and negative phases. The predominant setup for the west of Europe and for the UK and for the North Atlantic in the winter is a positive NAO. So this chart that we see here on the 15th of January 1989 is very, very typical of what a positive NAO looks like. We have above average height centered across France and down Spain and Portugal, a strong ridge backing all the way to the Azores, and then we have low pressure up around Greenland and Iceland. The squeeze in the isobars brings in these strong southwesterly winds, and so this is an unsettled pattern, particularly for northern parts of the country where it can be very stormy. It's also a mild pattern. A positive NAO is a mild pattern as the air gets drawn up from the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, it's always the weather that drives the index, so we have to keep that in mind. It's not the index that's driving the weather. The index is just reflecting the atmospheric state in the North Atlantic. Another pretty good example of a positive NAO is this one from 25th of January 2008. Again, you see how similar it is to the 1989 chart, with the high pressure centered to the south, ridging in from the Azores in towards Spain, Portugal and France. We've got low pressure up to the north around Greenland and Iceland. We've got this strong west-southwesterly wind as well. So again, this is a mild pattern. It's drawing the air up from the middle of the Atlantic. It's potentially stormy for northern parts of the country. In the south, a positive NAO can either be wet or dry, depending on how strong that ridge from the Azores high is. So in that scenario, it's actually bringing a lot of dry weather across southern parts of the country, but further north, it is very wet and windy. So that's what a positive NAO looks like. Now, the other side of this is a negative NAO, and when a negative NAO happens, you get the reverse. So instead of having all of that low pressure to the north around Greenland and Iceland, you actually get high pressure. This is from New Year's Eve 1978. You've got high pressure up here around Greenland and Iceland. And then instead of getting low pressure through the Azores and ridging into Spain, Portugal, France, instead of having high pressure there, we've got low pressure, you'll see. And the jet stream, which of course is the black line here, that is going a long way southwards as well. So it's a complete flip around. And instead of drawing up mild southwesterly winds, what we're actually doing is bringing in bitterly cold air from the east and ultimately from the north. So it draws down that cold air into northern and western parts of Europe. It can be snowy with this, with the low pressures just here engaging with that cold air, can dump lots of snow into northern and western parts of Europe. Another example of a negative NAO is this one from the 17th of December 2010. So this one again, masses of northern blocking in the December to remember, centered around Greenland, a trough of low pressure slinking down through Scandinavia, and we've got this direct northerly blasting all the way in from the top of the North Pole. There's the North Pole up there, of course. So again, total reverse on the positive NAO type setup, and we see that we've actually got low pressure down here underneath this blocking area of high pressure. That is an extremely negative NAO. So that's what the two phases of the positive and negative NAOs look like. Now, one of the things that we look for is the sea surface temperature anomalies in the month of May to possibly give us a clue about what we may see the NAO doing, what the pattern may be as we get through to the winter. Now, this only forms part of the GWV.com winter forecast. So this is just like our starting point. It's the first step along a journey, if you like. It's, if you're baking a cake, you're thinking of putting in the flour, but you've also got to add the eggs, you've got to add the sugar, you've got to add all of the other ingredients to get the cake together. It's the same thing with the GWV forecast, that this is kind of like putting in the flour into a mixing bowl, but then we'll have to add all of our other ingredients as we get through to the winter updates. We don't start those until we get through to September. I'll talk about that at the end of the video. So we can't use this on its own, this methodology. I wouldn't want to use this methodology on its own. It's not reliable enough for that. It is merely the first step along the journey, if you like, the first sort of ingredient, albeit quite an important ingredient. It's the first ingredient into baking the cake. Now, why the month of May? A lot of people ask me that, and to be honest, I'm not sure why it is particularly May sea surface temperature anomalies that we look at this. It's a UK Met Office methodology. They were the ones that specialised this sort of back in the day. I think they still do look at May sea surface temperature anomalies for clues for the following winter, but they don't, of course, issue seasonal forecasts now, but they do have a seasonal forecasting team, and I think they still look at this methodology. I'm not sure about that, if I'm right or wrong, but this is a UK Met Office methodology, and I've always been unsure why particularly it's the month of May that we look at to give us clues for the following winter, probably just because May is kind of like the least stormiest month of the year, really. It's a month that's most likely to have easterly winds into northern and western parts of Europe, so you tend to have a lack of low pressure stormy weather in the month of May. Not always, but on average, May is the quietest month in the Atlantic. I suppose without that churn within the Atlantic Ocean, it allows the Atlantic to kind of like find its way into its base state, if you like, for that particular year. And the idea is that the sea surface temperature anomalies that you have in May will recur as you get through towards the winter. That's the idea really behind this. So this is how the sea surface temperature anomalies looked in May 2015. You'll notice what we have here is a colder than average area of sea surface temperature anomalies just there. We have a warmer than average area of sea surface temperature anomalies just here, in the middle of the Atlantic, and then we're colder again as we look down into the tropical Atlantic Ocean. Now, what this does is it points us towards a positive NAO for the following winter, this kind of horseshoe shape, points us towards, if it was to recur, and probably would recur, if it was to recur from winter, it would point us towards a positive NAO for that winter. So based on that sea surface temperature anomaly, the GWV.com winter 2015-16 NAO forecast was for a positive NAO, and indeed we did have a very positive NAO through that winter. Another example of May sea surface temperature anomalies pointing you towards a positive NAO is this one from May last year. This is a very, very positive NAO sort of signature. Look at all this colder than average water we've got up here, colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies to the south of Greenland. Then it's significantly warmer underneath that. I mean, it's colder again as we look down towards the Mediterranean. We've got that classic sort of horseshoe shape of colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies. That would again lead one to forecast a positive NAO for the winter. The following winter, we did forecast a positive NAO for the winter of 2018-19 based on this single methodology. As I say, this is only the starting point. Do always keep that at the back of your mind, though. This is only the first step along the journey. So it is possible that you might have a positive NAO forecast, but the rest of our methodology might point us towards a cold winter, for example. That's actually what happened last winter. And we did, in the end, finish up forecasting a rather cold and average winter. We got that wrong. I suppose if we just stuck with the NAO forecast, we would have got the winter right. But then many other years, you would just stick with the NAO forecast and you would get the winter wrong because all of the other methodologies are important too. Anyway, that is a signature for a positive winter NAO forecast from 2018. Now, for a negative winter NAO forecast, this is the kind of thing that we're looking at. So we've got 2005 just here. We're looking for a tripole. A tripole is like three distinct bands of warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies there to the south of Greenland, colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies there, kind of like from the eastern coast of America, possibly over to Spain, and then warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies again as we go down into the tropical Atlantic. So you'll notice there's about those three distinct bands of warm over cool over warm. When you get that signature in the month of May, then you can start to forecast the chance anyway of a negative NAO through the subsequent winter. So if we saw that this year, then the forecast winter of 2019-2020 would be for a negative NAO. Another example is 2010. So again, you'll see that in May 2010, we have those three distinct bands, warmer than average to the south of Greenland, colder than average around Newfoundland, backing over towards the east coast of America, and then warmer than average again as we go down into the tropical Atlantic. Again, we've got three distinct bands. Let's get rid of all that. So we've got those three distinct bands. That's why it's a tripole: warm, cool, warm. That again is what we're looking for, that kind of thing anyway, what we're looking for in the month of May to be able to forecast a negative NAO through the subsequent winter. And then finally got this example from 1995, May 1995. Now this is much longer time ago, so the projection is very different. But if you think that we've got it warm up here, ignore this blue just there. That shouldn't be there. It should be warmer than average around that area. So that's a flaw within the old-fashioned sort of satellite. So it's warm up there, it's cold around there, and then it's warmer down here and going into the tropical Atlantic. It's a little bit different compared to the other two examples because the warmer than average area is kind of like in a horseshoe shape actually with this, and then we've got it colder around there. So it's a little bit different, partly because of the projection of the map, how old the map is. But again, that's the kind of thing that we are looking for. So we want it to be warmer somewhere up here. We want it to be cooler somewhere there. Possibly there, but not necessarily. But certainly we want it to be cooler just here. We want it to be warmer just here. And then we want it to be warmer down there if we are to forecast a negative NAO for the subsequent winter. So at that point, I'm going to pause the video. I've been talking for 15 minutes. I've explained what the NAO is. I've explained what we're looking for in terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic in the month of May. I'm going to pause the video there. We're going to come back in around 2 seconds time, and then we're going to go through the sea surface temperature anomaly maps from NOAA through the month of May, and we'll see what's happened during this May, during May 2019. And from that, we will then produce a forecast, an NAO forecast for winter of 2019-2020. So I'll see you in around 2 seconds time. I'm going to pause the video just there, and we'll meet back very, very shortly. Okay, we're back, and we are ready to resume the winter 2019-2020 NAO forecast from GWV.com. So in the first part of the video, we explained what the NAO is. We explained what we're doing with the video in terms of looking at sea surface temperature anomalies in the North Atlantic in the month of May. So if you would like a recap on what methodology is, then go back to the first part of the video. Now we are going to have a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies during this month, and then based on those sea surface temperature anomalies during May 2019, we are going to issue an NAO forecast for the winter of 2019-2020. So let's get on with it then, and this is the first chart that we have from the 2nd of May 2019. Now it's explaining that to get a negative NAO, which of course feeds us towards a colder winter, or leads us towards a colder winter forecast, we're looking for a tripole. Clearly on the 2nd of May 2019 we haven't got a tripole. It's cooler than average here to the south of Greenland, and then the rest of the North Atlantic is just looking rather warm, really. So that would lead us towards a rather positive NAO type forecast. That particular sort of sea surface temperature anomaly setup would lead us towards forecasting a positive NAO winter. This is from the 9th of May. And again, we see that it's rather cool just here. And then the rest of the Atlantic looks rather warm, really. So again, no tripole there, and that would again lead us towards a positive NAO winter forecast. This is from the 16th of May. Now we can see it's warming up a little bit in the tropical Atlantic. It is getting a bit warmer down there. Cold and average sea surface temperature anomalies are still to the south of Greenland, so it's still a bit colder there. It's also becoming colder around here, though, over towards Newfoundland, and it's relatively warm down there. So again, no tripole. This would still lead us to forecast a positive NAO winter, albeit to nowhere near the extent that we had last year. So if it was to stay like this, we would kind of like forecast the NAO to be weakly positive, I would suspect. But let's move on, have a look at the next chart, which is from 23rd of May. And you can see that what's going on here is that those colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies are starting to shrink from the south of Greenland. If I take you back to there on the 2nd of May, look how much colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies there is to south of Greenland. If we go on that chart, which you're looking at 23rd of May, you see that area is shrinking. So again, this would not lead us to forecast a positive NAO for winter of 2019-20 in its own terms. But the trend is quite interesting. It's still relatively warm down here it is becoming ever colder around there, and it is, although it is still cold just here, it is warming up to the south of Greenland. Getting quite interesting. We go on to the next chart, which is the final one for May 2019. This is from the 30th of May. And it's getting ever more interesting. We still have it warmer than average around here. Those colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies are becoming more focused all the time around Newfoundland and over towards the northeastern seaboard of America. This area to the south of Greenland is very frustrating. It remains colder than average just there, but it is warming up. It obviously through the progression is to warm the sea surface temperature anomalies up here to the south of Greenland. So whilst it is still a little bit colder than average, you see how those cold average sea surface temperature anomalies are shrinking. It's warming up around there. It's warming up around there. It's colder just there. And then it's relatively warm down there. So we almost, by the time we get through to the end of May 2019, we are almost kind of in a tripole type situation where it's becoming warmer up here. It's cooling down around there. And then it's relatively warm through the tropical Atlantic. We are very, very close there to a tripole, and the way this has evolved, we don't normally show you June, but the way this has evolved through June is that we have actually found our way towards what looks like it's pretty much a tripole type pattern. So it's much warmer than average now. This is the very latest, 27th of June, much warmer than average to the south of Greenland. It's colder than average there. It's warmer than average down there. We have now actually got what looks like tripole. The only problem is that we would really need it to be a little bit colder around here. So this closest eastern coast, you want it a bit colder there. But we are pretty much at a tripole in terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies now. And this progression has started through the month of May. Let's go back. So again, from there to there to there. You can see the way this has sort of been progressing and evolving from there to there. It's almost like a reverse of what happened last year. This is the start of May 2018. You see that we've got those colder than average areas just there, albeit not extremely so. That's the beginning of May 2018. By the end of May 2018, we have got a much stronger positive NAO signal, much colder just there, really warm through there, and much colder through there. So what has happened through this May, and again I'll just leave it there at the final sort of chart for May 2019. What has happened during this May is almost like a reverse of what happened last year. Last year we had a strengthening positive NAO signal. This May we have had a strengthening negative NAO signal. Now, when we're transitioning through May like this, it does present a few problems for the forecast. Clearly, we have a very different sea surface temperature anomaly in the Atlantic compared to this time last year. So there is no comparison between this year's sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic through May and last year's. That's the first thing to get on the table. So a very positive NAO for winter of 2019-2020 will not be the forecast from this. The question is, how much lower down the scale do we go? So what I'm tempted to do with this is kind of like go for a neutral to weakly negative NAO forecast for the winter of 2019-2020. But the problem is that if this pattern, oops, that's the wrong one, if that pattern had occurred during May, so if all of this progression happened quicker, if that pattern had occurred through the month of May, I would probably have gone for a proper negative NAO. I would probably have gone for a sort of at least moderate negative NAO, maybe even quite a strong negative NAO. That's happened by the time we got to the end of June, though. So we can't go that far with the forecast based on the sea surface temperature anomalies in the month of May. But nevertheless, I like the progression that we've had through May 2019. And I think, at the very least, we say a neutral NAO for winter 2019-20 based on this. Probably a negative, weekly negative NAO. So the forecast is kind of like neutral to weekly negative. And what that does, it will increase the chance of a colder winter for the UK and for Europe, and it also kind of like takes the Atlantic out of the equation a little bit for this winter. So this shouldn't be a winter where the Atlantic is kind of like overriding everything else. It should be a winter where the Atlantic is rather dormant and allows all of the other drivers of the weather to become rather more important. So those other drivers are the things that we look at through the winter updates, which I say begin. The first one will be the 1st of September. Those winter updates will include things like looking at ENSO, what's happening with El Nino. They'll be looking at Siberian snow cover, how quickly that's advancing across Eurasia. All of those kind of things, solar activity as well, will be included in that. And I'm sure other things that I've forgotten as well. Oh, Atlantic hurricane activity, that's something else that we look at. So all of those kind of things will be a little bit more important through this season, I think, because the Atlantic won't be as much of a player. And in fact, the Atlantic could be favouring, slightly anyway, a negative NAO through this winter. That would be my interpretation of what has happened with the sea surface temperature anomalies through May. If we was to include June, which I don't think we can, but if we was able to, then the forecast would actually be for a more strongly negative NAO through the winter of 2019-2020. So this is a very, very interesting forecast, and it does potentially point us to the chance of a colder winter for the UK and the northern parts of Europe. But again, there are those other drivers that are going to be very important when we get to the winter updates. And remember, this is just one part of the winter forecast that we will eventually release at the beginning of December. So this is just our first step along the journey. Every journey has a first step. Every saga has a beginning. And this is kind of like just our first step along that journey. Albeit, this year it is a very, very interesting first step. I'm sure you will agree. So what we need to do now, we've got the NAO forecast in the bank, and it's neutral to weekly negative with the NAO. We need to go away, enjoy the rest of the summer, and then we will come back at the beginning of September, and we will ramp up winter updates, and it will all eventually culminate in the winter forecast that will be released at the beginning of December. But very, very interesting winter NAO forecast this year. One of the more interesting ones that I've done. I think we haven't forecast many negative NAOs since we started this back in 2012. Probably only a couple. 2012 was one, I think. Can't think what the other year was. But we certainly don't forecast negative NAOs very often. Remember, we're only saying neutral to weekly negative with this. So not like we're going for a very negative NAO. But nevertheless, I think this is one of the more interesting NAO forecasts that we've done. Now, if you've enjoyed this winter 2019-2020 NAO forecast, please can you consider becoming a patron for Gaz Weathers. We have got 64 patrons so far. Hello, and a big thank you to our 64 patrons. Hope you enjoy the NAO forecast for winter 2019-20. If you would like to become a patron of Gaz Weathers, all you need to do is come to Gaz Weathers' Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account unless you already have one, and then you give an ongoing monthly donation to Gaz Weathers. It can be anything from $1 a month upwards. And thanks so much to all of our patrons for doing that. Alternatively, you can give a donation through PayPal. This is Gaz Weathers' PayPal page. So it's really simple. You just come here, sign in to your PayPal account, and you can give a donation to GWV Winter. And when you do it through Patreon or PayPal, you get a mention in videos, give you a shout out, say a big thank you for doing that. So thanks so much to everybody for that. And just going to say thank you to Richard Trott for supplying us with this particular GIF, which of course is our intro and outro GIF. So big thank you to Richard for that. Right, so there we go. Very, very interesting winter 2019-2020 NAO forecast. This video will be placed on what it has been created yet, but very soon we will be creating a page for winter 2019-2020 updates and forecasts. This video will be going on that page this evening after I get done with the live chat up to 5 o'clock. Don't forget to tune in for that on GWV's YouTube channel. So this video will be placed on that winter updates page for winter 2019-2020, and there'll be a written summary that goes with it as well. So you'll be able to come back here and watch the video on demand when you want, and you'll also be able to have a read of that written summary. So in the final analysis, the winter 2019-2020 NAO forecast is for a neutral to weakly negative NAO, possibly favouring a rather colder winter for the UK and Northern Europe for winter of 2019-2020. The first winter update will be released on the first day of September, and where we're starting off at with this NAO forecast, I think the winter updates are going to be very, very interesting this year. So I suggest you put it in your diary, enjoy the rest of the summer, but put it in your diary, and on the first day of September we'll start winter updates. And based on this NAO forecast, I've got a feeling those winter updates are going to be really interesting this year. Alright, at just over half an hour, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.